Your ticket is a fake. Every head in line turned. Phones lifted. Whispers cut through the space like static. The man she accused, tall, dark suit pressed. Calm eyes steady, didn't flinch. He stood still, hands relaxed at his sides, watching her as if she were reciting a script he'd heard before. She angled the boarding pass toward the light, her lips curling into a smirk. Only 12 of these exist in the world. And you expect me to believe you're holding one? But she never checked the scanner again. She didn't type his name into the system. She didn't even glance at the ID still resting on the counter. Her verdict came from the way he looked plain suit. No watch, no entourage. Passengers shifted uneasily. A teenager whispered to her mother, "Why does she sound so sure?" A businessman chuckled under his breath, already convinced. The quiet judgment spread like wildfire. The attendant leaned forward, finger stabbing toward his chest. "Step aside. People like you don't belong in first class." That word belong hung heavy in the air. The man's name was Marcus Carter, but no one here knew that. Not yet. To them, he was just another traveler who had somehow slipped into the wrong line. No expensive watch on his wrist, no designer tags. Just composure, just silence. The silence unsettled her. She doubled down, waving the pass like evidence in a courtroom. "Sir, I'll call security if you don't move right now." A woman 3 rows back raised her phone, recording. Her voice trembled but carried, "I saw it scan green. His ticket was valid." The attendant snapped back without even looking. "Ma'am, stay out of this. This is fraud." That word echoed. Fraud. A single syllable turning strangers into jurors, turning a traveler into a suspect. Marcus lowered his gaze to the torn edge of the boarding pass, then back to her face. His voice, when it came, was low, steady, deliberate. "Run my name." No anger, no panic, just a command that felt too calm for the moment. The kind of calm that wasn't submission, but patience. The kind of calm that suggested he had no reason to prove himself. The attendant hesitated. A colleague leaned in, whispering just loud enough, "Don't waste time. It's fake. These passes aren't for people like him." The words bled into the crowd. Some nodded, some frowned. A few pulled out their phones, unsure whether they were watching injustice or simply another airport scene. Marcus didn't move, didn't argue, didn't plead. He simply stood, tall and still, like an anchor in a storm he had weathered too many times before. And right then, in that pause, the story shifted from an ordinary check-in dispute to something heavier. This wasn't just about a boarding pass. It was about the question written on every suspicious glance. Who gets to belong? Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Marcus. The tension at Gate C12 thickened like storm clouds. Travelers leaned in, phones angled higher, every lens hungry for proof. The flight attendant's voice sharpened. "Security will handle you. Step aside." Her colleague, a young man with a clipped haircut, chimed in with a laugh that didn't match the seriousness of the moment. "First class isn't charity, buddy. Economy's that way." He jerked a thumb toward the back of the terminal, drawing a few chuckles from passengers who mistook cruelty for protocol. Marcus Carter's eyes didn't flicker. He simply repeated, calm as steel, "Run, my name." But they wouldn't. They never intended to. The verdict had been made before the ticket even printed. A woman near the counter folded her arms. "Why are you harassing him?" He showed ID. The attendant cut her off without looking. "Ma'am, please stop interfering. This is an active fraud case." The word fraud spread again, louder this time. A man in a blazer muttered, "Knew it. No way someone like him gets one of those tickets." Another whispered to his wife, "They can spot the fakes a mile away." But not everyone agreed. From the corner, a teenager raised his phone higher and whispered into the mic, "This feels wrong. Look at him. He's not even angry." And he wasn't. Marcus stood like he had all the time in the world. Like patience itself was armor. He'd seen this before at 25, when a bank teller froze his account for suspicious activity. At 30, when a hotel clerk told him his platinum card looked stolen. Different faces, same energy. The flight attendant leaned closer, eyes cold. "Last chance. Step away before you make this worse." The crowd murmured, the mood splitting down invisible lines, those ready to believe the worst, and those starting to feel the sting of injustice. A voice cut through, shaky but firm. "His ticket scanned green, I saw it." It was the woman from row 3, still holding her phone. Her hands trembled, but her conviction didn't. The attendant snapped her head toward her. "You're not staff. Stay out of it, or I'll have you escorted too." Ugh. The crowd gasped. Phones zoomed in. The moment wasn't private anymore, it was public, and it was spreading. Marcus finally shifted, tilting his head just slightly, his voice low enough to steady the room. "Call security if you must, but when you do, make sure you tell them exactly what you did. You tore up a valid first-class ticket." A ripple of silence. The businessman who had mocked him earlier lowered his eyes. The teenager whispered again, "He's not bluffing. Look at him." And the attendant's jaw tightened. Her colleague muttered under his breath, "Don't give him options. Just get him out." But it was too late. The energy in the terminal had shifted. Doubt had entered the room, and once doubt enters, it doesn't leave quietly. The sharp click of shoes cut across the gate. A uniformed security officer approached, radio clipped tight to his vest. The crowd parted instinctively, phones tilting higher, as if anticipating the moment before impact. The flight attendant wasted no time. She pointed at Marcus with a practiced certainty. "That's him. Fraudulent ticket. Remove him." The officer scanned Marcus quickly, plain suit, no luggage in hand, boarding pass ripped in half on the counter, optics over evidence. "Sir, I need you to step away from the line. Now." Marcus didn't move. His voice, calm but edged, carried through the terminal. "Ask her why she didn't scan my ticket a second time." The officer frowned, turning slightly, but the attendant snapped first. "Because I don't need to. I know a fake when I see one." Gasps erupted. A woman near the wall whispered, "She just admitted it. She didn't even check." A man muttered, "That's not procedure. That's bias." But the officer didn't budge. He stepped closer, hand brushing against the radio. "Sir, comply, or I'll have to escort you out." Then came the moment that cracked the air wide open. The attendant, frustrated, snatched Marcus's torn ticket from the counter and shoved it into the trash bin with a dramatic flick. Trash where it belongs. The sound of paper hitting plastic echoed louder than it should have. The crowd recoiled. The teenager filming whispered into his mic, "She just threw it away. Oh my God, she actually did that." Marcus's eyes followed the ticket as it slid down into the bin, then rose slowly to meet hers. No anger, just a steady weight that made even her shift uncomfortably. "You didn't just throw away a piece of paper," he said, voice like a quiet blade. "You threw away your job." The officer stiffened. The attendant scoffed. The crowd erupted into whispers, half in disbelief, half in awe of the composure radiating from the man who hadn't raised his voice once. Another voice rang out from behind the rope line, a woman in a business suit, mid-40s, her tone sharp. "He's right. I work in aviation compliance. What you just did is grounds for termination." Phones swung toward her. The room shifted again. Doubt became evidence. The attendant's face flushed red. She barked louder, as if noise could erase truth. "Security now! Get him out before this gets worse." But worse had already arrived. The silence wasn't silence anymore, it was judgment, and every lens in that terminal was capturing it. The security officer shifted closer, hand hovering near Marcus's arm. "Sir, this is your final warning." The flight attendant folded her arms. Certain victory glowed in her smirk. "Remove him now." But Marcus didn't step back. He didn't raise his voice. Instead, he reached slowly into his pocket, pulled out a slim phone, and tapped one button. His voice was calm, precise, audible to anyone within 10 feet. "Rachel, initiate protocol." The terminal froze, not because anyone knew what protocol meant, but because of how he said it steady, deliberate, like a man pressing a detonator without flinching. On the other end, a crisp female voice answered instantly. "Yes, Mr. Carter. Logging incident. Compliance board is notified. Live monitoring engaged." Murmurs rippled across the gate. The teenager filming gasped. "Wait, compliance board? Did she say Mr. Carter?" The officer hesitated. The flight attendant didn't. She barked louder. "Don't fall for his act. He's stalling. Get him out." But Marcus didn't move. His gaze stayed locked on the officer. "Before you touch me, ask yourself, how many cameras are pointed at you right now?" The officer glanced around. A sea of phones stared back. Dozens of little red dots blinking. Evidence stacking in real time. Rachel's voice came again, firm through the speaker. "Mr. Carter, board members James, Sarah, and David have been alerted. They're reviewing live feeds. Should I escalate to the CEO channel?" Marcus exhaled once, controlled. "Yes, mark this as hostile escalation, full documentation." The attendant's smirk cracked. "CEO channel? What is this nonsense?" But the crowd had shifted. Whispers swelled into voices. He's not bluffing. Did you hear that? Board members are watching. This is bigger than a boarding pass. The officer's posture faltered. He lowered his hand from Marcus's arm, uncertainty tightening his jaw. Marcus finally turned to face the attendant. His words landed like stone. You didn't just deny a passenger. You triggered a protocol you can't shut down. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Not with the crowd watching. Not with every phone recording. From the back, a woman in a red blazer whispered to her companion, Carter? Wait, is that Marcus Carter? The investor? The name spread like fire in dry grass. One whisper feeding another until the entire gate buzzed with recognition. And in that moment, silence hit harder than any shout. Marcus Carter hadn't proven who he was. The crowd had started doing it for him. The buzz of recognition spread through gate C12 like wildfire. Marcus Carter. The name carried weight, though not everyone could place it. Enough passengers leaned in, whispering, searching, connecting dots. The flight attendant's jaw clenched. She raised her voice, trying to drown the murmurs. Everyone calm down, this man is attempting fraud. He is not a valid first-class passenger. But her certainty cracked under the sound of Rachel's voice, still coming through Marcus's phone. Board confirmation ongoing. Incident logged. All language and actions are time-stamped. The officer glanced at the phone, then at the crowd. Hesitation flickered across his face. A middle-aged woman in a tailored suit finally spoke up, stepping closer. I work in corporate law. What I just heard, that's documentation. You can't dismiss that. Another passenger joined in. A younger man with a backpack raised his phone higher. She never scanned his ticket again. I filmed the whole thing. The crowd shifted, a tide of witnesses forming without instruction. The flight attendant's colleague, nervous but emboldened by her presence, scoffed. Phones don't change the rules. He doesn't belong here. Protocol is protocol. That word protocol cut the air like a dull blade. Marcus finally looked his way, his voice low but carrying. You don't get to hide behind the word protocol when you skipped every step of it. Gasps rippled. Someone muttered, he's right. She just made a call based on looks. The attendant's face flushed red. She turned toward the back of the gate, waving urgently. Manager. Moments later, a man in a charcoal blazer stormed forward, expression tight with authority. His badge read Pierce Gate Supervisor. He didn't ask questions. He didn't look at the ID. He just pointed at Marcus. Remove him. The officer stiffened, caught between two commands. The crowd erupted. You can't do that. He showed his ID. This is discrimination. The manager snapped at them, his voice sharp. Stay out of this. None of you understand airline policy. But the crowd didn't quiet. In fact, their voices grew louder, stronger, unified by the wrong they'd just witnessed. A teenage boy, still recording, called out from the back. Funny how your policy always kicks in when someone looks like him. The words landed heavy. A hush swept briefly before turning into low, angry murmurs. Marcus remained still, calm as a stone in the storm. His silence was louder than their shouting, and everyone felt it. Rachel's voice returned through the phone, crisp and final. Mr. Carter, escalation confirmed. Legal is on standby. Compliance board is requesting direct confirmation from you. The manager's smirk faltered. He hadn't expected resistance, not from the crowd, not from the calm man holding the phone. And though the truth hadn't been spoken aloud yet, the atmosphere shifted. The balance of power in Gate C12 was no longer in airline hands. It was tilting fast toward Marcus Carter. The manager's voice boomed over the murmurs, sharp and commanding. Enough. This man is not a first-class passenger. He forged his documents. Security, remove him now. The words cracked through the air like a whip. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Dozens of phones were already raised, but now every lens tilted forward, recording every syllable. Marcus didn't flinch. He stood anchored, hands at his sides, gaze steady. A woman near the front shouted back, "You didn't even check. He gave you ID and you ignored it." The manager snapped toward her, voice dripping with disdain. "Stay out of this. Do you think I'd mistake a real first-class passenger for him?" The last word lingered like poison. Phones caught every syllable. The crowd erupted. Some gasped. Some cursed under their breath. Others yelled outright. A teenager's voice cut through, clear on his live stream. He just said it out loud. That's not policy. That's prejudice. The manager waved dismissively, but his jaw was tight. He barked at the officer again. "Do your job. Get him out." But the officer hesitated. Every phone in the gate was aimed directly at him now, waiting, recording. His authority felt smaller under the red glow of dozens of recording lights. Marcus finally spoke, calm but cutting. You just called me a fraud without evidence. You just told an entire gate that I don't belong not because of protocol but because of perception. The words hung in the air like a verdict. The crowd murmured louder, their anger swelling into solidarity. A man in a gray hoodie yelled, "We're not moving until you explain yourselves." Oh. A woman with a stroller added, "You can't treat people like this in public. Not anymore." The manager's face flushed red, but instead of retreating, he doubled down. He grabbed the trashed boarding pass from the bin, waving the crumpled paper like proof. This is fake. That's all anyone needs to know." But even as he said it, doubt spread across his own face. His voice cracked, and the crowd pounced. "Then scan it again," someone shouted. "Why won't you check the system?" another demanded. Phones caught every second, every stumble. Rachel's voice came clear through Marcus's phone once more. "Mr. Carter, escalation level 3. Compliance board is watching live. Do you wish to authorize recording of staff language and conduct for legal?" Marcus's reply was low, steady, unmistakable. "Yes, log every word." The crowd gasped. The manager froze. And in that moment, the narrative was no longer his to control. It was slipping fast into Marcus Carter's hands. The air in Gate C12 was no longer background noise, it was electricity, thick and crackling. Dozens of phones hovered, recording. Conversations turned into protests. The manager's face was flushed with anger, but behind his eyes, a flicker of panic was starting to show. He slammed the crumpled boarding pass against the counter. "This ticket is invalid." End of discussion. Then, with deliberate force, he tore the paper in half. The sound ripped through the terminal like a gunshot. Gasps erupted, sharp and collective. A woman screamed, "You can't do that!" The teenager live streaming nearly dropped his phone, whispering into the mic. He just destroyed it. He actually tore it in half. The flight attendant stood beside him, arms folded, smirking as if justice had been served. There, problem solved. But it wasn't solved. It was ignited. The crowd erupted louder, voices overlapping. "That's theft." He paid for that ticket. You can't just destroy it." The officer moved forward, hand tightening on Marcus's arm. "Sir, you're coming with me now." Marcus didn't resist. He didn't even step back. His voice stayed calm, steady, resonant enough for every phone in the gate to capture. "You just tore up a valid first-class ticket in front of witnesses. You escalated this from suspicion to destruction of property." The officer hesitated. He glanced at the torn pieces fluttering on the counter, then at the dozens of recording phones. His grip loosened slightly. The manager barked, louder now, desperate. "Don't listen to him. He doesn't belong here. People like him." The words caught in his throat as the crowd shouted back in unison. "Enough! We heard you." "That's discrimination." A woman in a blazer stepped forward, voice sharp as glass. "Say it again. Say people like him. Finish your sentence so everyone hears what you really mean." The manager froze, lips pressed tight, the weight of every camera lens pinning him in place. Marcus tilted his head slightly, eyes steady, voice low. "Finish it, if you have the courage." But he didn't. Silence swallowed him, heavier than any denial. Rachel's voice broke through the phone again, crisp, undeniable. "Mr. Carter, escalation level 4. Legal is present. Compliance confirms this incident has reached termination threshold." The crowd gasped at the word termination. The teenager whispered to his stream, "Termination threshold? What does that even mean? This guy's not normal. He's someone big." The officer stepped back fully now, his hand off Marcus's arm. The balance had shifted. What began as humiliation was no longer Marcus Carter's to carry, it was the airline's to answer for. And the silence that followed wasn't just tension, it was judgment. The torn ticket still fluttered on the counter, but Marcus didn't look at it. His phone was steady in his hand, voice calm enough to quiet the storm. "Rachel, escalate. Activate protocol alpha. Notify executive channel." Her reply was instant, crisp through the speaker. "Confirmed, Mr. Carter. Executive channel online. Compliance and legal standing by. Would you like full broadcast?" Marcus's gaze swept across the gate, pausing on the crowd of witnesses, on every camera raised. "Yes, broadcast." A beat of silence. Then Rachel's voice again. "Live feed is active. Every device here is now evidence." The words struck the gate like thunder. The teenager's live stream exploded, comments flooding in, numbers climbing. A woman whispered to her husband, "Did she say live feed? Broadcast to who?" The manager scoffed, trying to mask the tremor in his tone. "This is ridiculous. He's bluffing. He's some con man with a prepaid phone." But his words rang hollow. The officer had already stepped back, radio lowered, eyes flicking between Marcus and the growing tide of restless passengers. Marcus finally moved just a single step forward. Not aggressive, but deliberate. His voice carried. "You thought tearing up my ticket would erase me. Instead, you erased yourselves." Gasps rippled. Phones zoomed closer. The flight attendant's smirk faltered. Rachel's voice cut in again. "Board acknowledgement received. Chairman has joined the channel. Authorization codes are locked. Mr. Carter, do you want to proceed with executive override?" The name Chairman ignited the crowd. Whispers turned into open shock. "Chairman? Did she say chairman? Who is this guy? No way a regular passenger gets that kind of access." The manager tried to salvage ground. "Enough games. Security, this is your last chance. Remove him or you're out of a job." But the officer didn't move. He shook his head once, voice low. "Not touching him, not after this." A woman in the crowd called out, "Listen to the officer. This isn't fraud, this is power." The atmosphere flipped. No longer Marcus versus the airline. Now it was Marcus and the crowd against a cornered staff. Marcus raised the phone slightly, eyes never leaving the manager. "Rachel, mark this moment. Full system escalation. Effective immediately." The manager's face drained of color, but Marcus wasn't finished. His calm words carried the weight of a hammer. "You wanted me out of this gate. Now watch what happens when I step in." The gate had gone quiet, but it wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence that comes right before a verdict. Phones hovered high. Dozens of eyes locked on Marcus. The manager's breathing was sharp, ragged, as if he'd been cornered. Rachel's voice came steady through the phone. "Mr. Carter, escalation complete. All directors online. Chairman requests your confirmation before proceeding." The word chairman hit the crowd again like a gavel. Passengers whispered furiously, "Chairman? This guy's nobody? You believe that? Nobody gets that kind of call unless he's somebody at the very top." The manager shook his head violently, shouting over them, "Don't listen. He's bluffing. He's just a fraud with a script." But the crowd wasn't with him anymore. A woman near the back raised her phone and said loudly, "Bluffing doesn't make compliance and legal show up in real time." Marcus finally turned, not to the staff, but to the passengers. His voice carried across the gate, calm, deliberate. "You've all seen what happened here. A valid first-class ticket, dismissed without procedure, ID ignored. My property destroyed. My dignity questioned." He paused, letting the weight of it hang. The crowd leaned in. Even the officer seemed to straighten, waiting. Marcus's gaze shifted back to the manager, sharp as glass. "You wanted to know who I am? Fine. My name is Marcus Carter, and I am the majority shareholder of this airline." The words landed like an explosion. Gasps shot through the gate. A man dropped his phone in shock. The teenager live streaming nearly screamed into his mic, "Majority shareholder, holy hell, he owns the airline." The manager stumbled, lips parting but no words coming out. The flight attendant's smirk evaporated, her hands trembling at her sides. Marcus didn't stop. His tone grew harder, sharper, but never rose to a shout. "You didn't just insult a passenger, you humiliated the man who signs your paychecks. The man who built the very system you thought you were protecting." The crowd erupted, phones capturing every syllable. Some cheered outright. Others shouted, "We knew it! Exposed! Justice, right here!" The officer stepped back completely, shaking his head as if to say, "I'm not touching this anymore." Rachel's voice returned, calm and surgical. "Mr. Carter, the board has acknowledged your statement. Authorization for disciplinary action is ready. Do you want to proceed?" Marcus let the silence stretch. His eyes never left the trembling manager. "Not yet," he said softly. "Let him understand what he tried to erase." The crowd buzzed again, electricity in the air. And in that moment, it wasn't Marcus who looked like he didn't belong, it was the staff who had condemned him. For a long moment, no one moved. The only sound was the low hum of cameras, the faint buzz of live stream notifications pinging one after another. Then it broke not with words, but with gasps and shouts rising like a wave. "He owns the airline. We're witnessing history." They just humiliated their boss on camera. The teenager's live stream count shot past 10,000. His voice shook as he narrated, You're watching this live. Gate C12. Marcus Carter just revealed he's the majority shareholder, and these people tried to throw him out. The manager's face drained of color. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His badge suddenly looked flimsy, his authority paper-thin. The flight attendant who had mocked Marcus clutched her hands together, knuckles pale, eyes darting like a trapped animal. One of her colleagues whispered, just loud enough for the crowd to catch it, "We're finished." Phones zoomed in. Passengers didn't hide their satisfaction anymore. A businessman clapped once, sharp and deliberate. Then another joined. Soon applause rippled across the gate, raw and unscripted. The officer who had once reached for Marcus's arm now stepped back fully, arms raised slightly as if to show the crowd, "I'm not part of this." His radio crackled, but he didn't answer. He just shook his head. The manager stumbled forward, voice breaking. This can't be real. You're lying. You don't look like—" He stopped himself, but the damage was done. The crowd roared, "Say it again! We heard you! That's discrimination!" Marcus didn't raise a finger. He didn't need to. The crowd had become his chorus, amplifying his silence into thunder. Rachel's voice cut through the chaos, calm as ever. "Mr. Carter, the board requests confirmation. All employees at Gate C12 are flagged pending your directive." The manager's lips trembled. The flight attendant whispered, "Please, we didn't know." But the excuses sounded hollow. The cameras were relentless. Every angle, every word, every gesture was already archived, immutable, undeniable. A woman in the crowd shouted over the noise, "This is what happens when prejudice writes policy." Her words triggered cheers, claps, even chants. Someone began repeating Marcus's name. Soon the gate echoed, "Carter, Carter, Carter." The manager's composure shattered. His hands trembled. His voice was barely audible. "We were just following procedure." But everyone knew better now. Procedure hadn't torn that ticket. Bias had. And as Marcus stood motionless, calm in the center of the storm, it became clear this wasn't just his vindication. It was a reckoning. The applause still echoed when Marcus finally lifted the phone closer to his mouth. His voice carried steady, unshaken, the kind of tone that made silence fall like a command. "Rachel." Her reply was immediate. "Yes, Mr. Carter." Effective, immediately terminate the employment of every staff member at Gate C12 who participated in this incident. Lock their system access. Revoke badges. Issue compliance alerts to security. The words sliced through the air like steel. Gasps shot through the gate. The manager staggered back as if the ground had given way beneath him. Rachel's voice returned, precise and final. "Confirmed. Executing now." Almost instantly, the manager's badge on his chest buzzed with a faint red glow. A warning tone beeped once, then twice. The flight attendant's badge followed. Then her colleagues, all at once, their credentials died in their hands. The flight attendant clutched hers desperately, tapping it against the scanner by reflex. The machine flashed red, denying her. Again. No access. No power. The crowd gasped, then erupted into cheers. Phones zoomed in on the blinking badges, capturing every desperate swipe, every failure. A passenger shouted, "They're locked out! It's over!" The manager's face collapsed. He slammed his badge against the scanner, voice cracking. "This is a mistake. I've worked here 15 years. Marcus's gaze was cold, unyielding. 15 years. And today you threw away your career in 15 seconds. The words landed like a verdict. The crowd roared louder, clapping, whistling, chanting his name again. The officer stepped back, shaking his head in disbelief, but a smile tugged at his lips. Even he knew justice had just unfolded in real time. The flight attendant dropped her badge on the counter, trembling. "Please, we didn't know who you were." Marcus's voice was sharp enough to cut through her plea. "That's the problem. You judged me on who you thought I wasn't." Phones caught the line instantly. A teenager whispered to his live stream, "That's the quote. That's the drop the mic moment." Rachel's voice confirmed once more. "System override complete. All flagged employees have been terminated. Their access is revoked across the airline." The crowd erupted again, this time with a kind of wild satisfaction. For once, prejudice hadn't been met with silence. It had been met with consequence. And standing at the center, Marcus Carter hadn't lifted his voice once. He hadn't needed to. His authority spoke louder than any shout. The gate was no longer an airport terminal. It was a courtroom, and the verdict had been delivered. The manager stood pale, badge useless in his hand. The flight attendant stared at the floor, trembling, her voice gone. Phones hovered high like a wall of eyes, unblinking, recording every detail. The officer stepped aside fully, his silence an admission of where he stood now. Marcus Carter remained at the center, unshaken, his presence anchoring the storm. He lowered his phone slowly, then lifted his gaze to the crowd. I didn't need to raise my voice today. I didn't need to fight back with anger. I let silence show me how far prejudice would go. The words carried heavy across the gate, each syllable striking harder than any shout. The crowd leaned in. Some filmed, some simply listened. And what we saw wasn't procedure. It wasn't policy. It was bias, unmasked, undeniable, and on full display. The teenager streaming whispered breathlessly into his mic. This is the moment. Listen to this. Marcus's gaze shifted back to the staff who had condemned him minutes earlier. His tone sharpened, a final cut. You thought you were humiliating me, but all you did was reveal yourselves. Gasps. Applause. Cheers rippled across the gate, swelling into a roar. A businessman clapped hard. A woman with a stroller shouted, "Yes!" Others chanted again, "Carter, Carter, Carter!" Marcus raised a hand gently, and the noise quieted. His final words dropped like iron. I don't need a video to prove who I am. I am the result. And from this day forward, let it be clear, justice doesn't scream. It acts. Silence. Then thunderous applause, echoing through Gate C12 until it rattled the glass walls. The moment was irreversible. The humiliation was over. The reckoning complete. Marcus turned, collected, and walked toward the boarding bridge. No guard stopped him. No staff dared speak. The path cleared before him, carved not by privilege, but by consequence. And as the doors closed behind him, the crowd knew they hadn't just watched a passenger win an argument. They had witnessed justice carried out in real time, calm, absolute, unforgettable.